Hey, mathletes, welcome to ordering fractions and decimals with a twist, right? We are talking about ordering them with positive and negative numbers. So just a few things to keep in mind when we are using the number line method, which is the one that I'm strongly suggesting you to keep fresh in your brain. We are talking about where they would be on a number line. We are talking about how the further a number is to the left, the smaller it is. The further a number is to the right, the larger it is. Remember that this does not matter if they are both positive or both negative or one of each. This universally is a great way to think it through. So a couple of things you saw me doing while I was chatting with you is that I first went through and I made sure that I drew attention to the negative signs because sometimes our brain tries to take a shortcut. And then I also drew attention to whether I was being asked to start with the least value or the greatest value because I bounced around in the homework between what I was asking you to do. All right, so let's take a peek, starting with the least. We have -7/8 is going to be first. Then we can compare with doing cross multiplication. These are both positive, so just normal crossing. 2 and 2 is 4. 5 and 1 is 5. So 2/5 and then 1/2. Coming over here, we have two negative numbers. We're being asked to start with the greatest. So 7/10 is going to be the greatest. Now, here is a tip. I can cross multiply, right, to compare them, 2/3 and 3/4. And 3 and 3 is 9, 4 and 2 is 8. So 3/4 is greater than 2/3 when it's positive. Flip your thinking and be careful because now 2/3 is going to come first and then 3/4 is going to come because remember that the further we get from 0, the smaller the value. So on a number line, 3/4 is going to be further away than 2/3. So watch that. You can still use that same way to compare, but just make sure that you're switching your thinking to negative, okay? Starting with the greatest, 7/8. If we compare using cross multiplying for our fractions, 5 and 1 is 5, 8 and 2 is 16. So 2/5 is going to be the smaller, but in here, it's going to be bigger, going like that, okay? Starting with the least is going to be the one with a negative sign. If we cross multiply, 5 and 5 is 25, 8 and 4 is 32. So then we would come here and here. Hopefully the arrows are not confusing, but I'm just trying to rock and roll through these because, as you know, I have a bunch of grades to do. If you are confused, though, and you need me to list them out, please let me know. I'm happy to do it. All right, starting with the least, we're going to be negative. And then 2/3 is going to be our middle value. 9/10 is going to be our greatest value. Starting with the least as the ending point, we're going to start there. 8 and 3 is going to be less than 3 and 10. So 3/10 is going to be the greatest. 3/8 is the middle value. If you have any questions, please bring them with you to class. But remember, be careful with your positive and negative numbers. Flip your thinking. Remember, in the land of negative, big is small and small is big. And also make sure you know what I'm asking you to do. Go ahead and bring any questions with you to class if you're ready for page 2. Hang tight. Hey guys, welcome to page 2. I'm going to go ahead and mark this up like I was doing with my other ones because it's important to draw your attention to not only is it positive and negative, but am I being asked to start with the greater value or the smaller value? A couple of tips and tricks to keep you on track. Remember that in the land of negative, small is big and big is small. Remember, the further to the left on the number line is going to be the smaller value. Further to the right on the number line is going to be the greater value. First one, we're starting with the smaller amount. And we're thinking, where is this on the number line? Remember, our negative number line works backwards, right? Starting at 0, moving to the left, we have 1, then 2, then 3, going out. So if we're comparing using cross multiplication, 4 and 7 is 28. 8 and 3 is 24. Okay, but remember, big is small and small is big. So 7/8 is going to be the smallest. That's the furthest away from 0. Then 3/4, 4/5 would be the greatest. For this one, we know this is definitely going to be the least. Now we're thinking about what's going to be the biggest. 3 and 10 is 30. 9 and 5 is 45. 9/10 is the largest. 3/5 is the middle value. Coming down here, greatest is definitely going to be 1/4 because it's the only positive value. If we cross multiply for the negatives, 8 and 2 is 16. 5 and 1 is 5. So this is going to be second place. This is going to be third place as the smallest. Starting with the least over here, we only have one negative, definitely the least. If we cross multiply, 3 times 1 is 3, 5 times 2 is 10, so 1/5, and then 2/3. Coming down here, starting with the least, only one negative, so that is easy peasy lemon squeezy. Then we are looking at 1/8 and 1/3. I don't even need to cross multiply. I know that 1/8 is going to be smaller than 1/3 because if I take my famous piece of cake, cut it into 8 pieces, take the same size piece of cake, cut it into 3 pieces, 8 pieces is definitely going to be smaller. Starting with the greatest this time, only one positive, so we're going to put that there. Then we need to consider 4/5 and 7/8. Remember, I can cross multiply, but I'm living in the land of negatives, so I have to switch my thinking. 5 and 7 is 35, 8 and 4 is 32. So we have 35, 32. So second and then third. That's the end of page 2. If you have any questions, bring them with you to class. Welcome to the land of comparing and ordering positive and negative decimals. Now, these are much easier to look at, but a couple of tips and tricks, just like always, make sure you know which ones are negative. Take a second, draw your attention to those things. Also, make sure you know if you're going to be starting least to greatest or greatest to least. It's beneficial to me, but you know your brain at this point, so decide what works best for you. Starting with the smallest, but knowing that small in the land of negative is backwards, right? So this is going to be our smallest, middle, large. Starting with greatest this time, we have two positive numbers. This is going to be our greatest, this is second place, and this is our smallest. Coming down here, starting with the greatest, 2 and 3/9, 2 and 3. 0 is our hero. It helps our brain make solid connections. Looking over here, least is definitely the negative one, middle, and end. These are much easier to compare because they don't take much thought. Our brain is really good at decimals. Smallest, middle, large. Remember, in the land of negative numbers, big is small and small is big. Definitely the smallest because it's the only decimal. Add your 0, comparing 90 and 10. That is the end of our decimal page. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Moving on to page 2 of just ordering decimals. Remember, take a minute. Which numbers are negative? This helps our brain make really strong, quick, and correct connections. Am I being asked to start with least or greatest? At this point, you've noticed I always circle the least. That's just the way my brain works. Do you do what works for you? I have two small numbers, two negative numbers. 1 and 3/10 is going to be further away from 0, though, so that's definitely going to be my smallest. Over here, this is definitely the smallest. It's the only negative one. Use 0. 0 is my hero. It helps my brain. 81 is definitely bigger than 60. Over here, only one negative one. You're definitely small, filling in with zeros to make good connections. 600 is bigger than 412. Starting least, you are furthest from 0 than you. Think of it like 40. You're definitely the greatest. Coming over here, we have two least. They both have whole number 3, so we got to go look at the 10th place. We have a 9 and a 3. You are the furthest from 0, so you are the smallest. Last one, only one great, because the other two are negative. I'm going to say that you are just like 40 and you are like 52. 40 is closer to 0 than 52 is. If you have any questions, bring them with you to class. All right, last page. We are hip hopping and popping between our skills. Make sure you start with, am I negative? Am I positive? Am I being asked to find the least or the greatest? Be careful. Decimals are easy to rock and roll through, but take your time with your fractions. Make sure you're comparing them properly and not just guessing if you've got it. So you're definitely the greatest, my friend. You're the only positive number. 9 and 2 is 18, 3 and 4 is 12, but less is more and more is less in the land of negatives. Flip-flop our thinking. Decimals are great. They're easy to compare. Use 0. It is so helpful because I'm really comparing 50 and 75, not just 5. Don't forget those place-saving zeros. You're the only negative one, so you're definitely the smallest. Place-saving 0 tells me that 45 hundredths is greater than 40. Over here, you're the least because you're the only negative. 9 and 2 is 18. 7 and 3 is 21. So you are small and you are large. Coming down here, you're the only negative one. So you are definitely small. Now this one, we could cross multiply, or I could say that half of 7 is 3.5, and we're not there yet. So you're middle, you're large. If I cross multiply, 7 and 1 is 7, 2 and 3 is 6. The math still agrees. You're definitely the greatest. You're the only positive number. Adding a 0, you are closer to 0 than 9 and 70 hundredths in the land of negative. Any questions, please bring them with you to class. Have a good weekend.